Hey guys, tonight we're slipping backward through time. Not gently, not slowly, but all at once. One blink, and you're no longer in your cozy bed with clean sheets, air conditioning, and the faint buzz of your phone on the nightstand. Instead, you're waking up in 1840s London. You're cold, you're itchy, you're already late for work, and that bed you're lying on, it's barely a mattress. It's a sack of straw, possibly shared, possibly damp, and definitely hiding at least one small creature. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It's oddly soothing to picture this sleepy little community stretching across time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You cough. The air is thick and sour, filled with a fog that isn't just weather. It's London's infamous pea soup smog, a witch's brew of coal smoke, soot, damp, and God knows what else. This isn't some isolated weather event. This is daily life. You breathe it in with every step, and your lungs politely scream in return. A neighbor creaks open his door and lobs a blackened lump of coal into his fireplace. It hisses and cracks, adding another greasy ribbon of smoke to the already choking corridor air. Coal is king here. It powers the factories, the trains, and every single fireplace in the city. It also coats the buildings in grime, the windows in sludge, and your own face in a fine, ever-present charcoal blush. Victorian London smells like rot and fire. You get used to it, sort of. The streets steam with horse manure, open gutters run with waste, and the Thames, the grand River Thames, bubbles with sewage. Historians still argue whether the infamous Great Stink of 1858 was the worst moment in the river's long, unfortunate career. But you don't need to debate it. You just need to walk past and try not to gag. Every morning starts like this. You trudge through narrow alleys lined with crooked houses that seem to lean forward like gossiping grandmothers. Beneath your feet, muck. Around your ankles, rats. Above you, washing lines full of underclothes and coats waving like surrender flags. A lady rushes past you, skirts hitched to avoid the puddle of something, possibly alive. You both know better than to ask what it was. Victorian city life is a full-body experience, visual, olfactory, and deeply unromantic. You reach a corner where a ragged child is selling boiled sweets that probably contain more lead than sugar. He's got soot in his eyebrows and a smile full of gaps. You buy one anyway, not for the flavor your sense of taste left years ago, but because he reminds you of your younger brother. As you pop the candy in your mouth and it crunches suspiciously, a cart trundles past carrying a mound of filth scraped from the nearby cesspits. You step back just in time to avoid a splatter. That's not sewage, the man tells you with a grin. That's night soil. It'll be dumped outside the city and maybe sold as fertilizer. Maybe. You dodge a beggar, tip your hat to the flower girl with the bad cough, and squeeze into the narrow entrance of your building. The hallway smells like wet plaster and boiled cabbage. A woman on the second floor is already shouting. Someone's been stealing coal again, or bread, or soap. Your nose tingles. That coal soot doesn't just coat your walls and furniture, it coats your lungs. It blackens your nostrils, sneaks into your soup, and hangs in the curtains like a quiet curse. Children here often develop what the doctors politely call consumption, which makes it sound oddly voluntary. You know it as the rattling cough that takes people away one rib at a time. You head back to your room to grab your coat. As you pass the stairwell, you glance down into the gloom. A rat stares back up at you with an expression you could almost mistake for judgment. He's probably been here longer than you have. Some days you get used to it. Other days the smell sneaks up on you and smacks you in the back of the head. And still, London marches on. Factories chug, chimneys belch, and horses clip-clop through filth, while noblemen sip tea in their well-aired parlors. You pass a group of chimney sweeps, boys no older than 10, faces black as shadows, teeth flashing white beneath. One of them gives you a grin and a wink. He probably sleeps inside a flue most nights. Not all heroes wear capes, some wear soot. You head back outside. A shopkeeper is sweeping his stoop, flicking yesterday's ash into the street. A few doors down, a butcher's window displays gray meat strung with flies. You politely avert your eyes. Meat is a luxury anyway. Most days, you survive on bread, tea, and a desperate sense of humor. A woman walks past with a lace handkerchief pressed to her nose. A trend, yes, but also a defense mechanism. Some handkerchiefs were even soaked in vinegar or perfume to mask the stench of daily life. One 19th century socialite swore by ambergris, the waxy, sweet-smelling substance produced in the intestines of sperm whales. Who says luxury can't be horrifying? But hey, at least it's better than the city's early solution to stink, spreading lime powder on the streets to soak up the worst of the rot. Unfortunately, lime plus horse urine does not equal roses. You find a brief moment of peace when the wind shifts, and you can actually smell something green, a distant hint of grass from Hyde Park, maybe, or a very determined potted plant. Either way, you savor it before the fog returns. Just before sunset, the smog thickens again, curling into your collar like a jealous lover. You head home, your boots caked in things you try not to name. The street lamps flicker to life, gas-fueled and eerie, casting long shadows in the fog. Somewhere nearby, a man is singing an off-key ballad about lost love and potatoes. You hum along. Night settles like a blanket soaked in smoke. You crawl back into your straw bed, scratch at something moving in the corner, and pull the thin blanket over your face, not for warmth, but to filter out the air. And you sleep, lungs tight, clothes grimy, but thankful you didn't step in anything worse. This time, you open your eyes to the sound of coughing, deep, rattling, wet coughing. It's not yours this time. It's coming through the thin wooden wall that separates your room from the neighbors. Probably old Mr. Fitch again, the retired dock worker who smokes 5 pipes a day and refuses to die. Good for him, you suppose. You stretch beneath the threadbare blanket and feel the familiar itch creeping up your spine. Fleas or lice or both. You lost track a long time ago. The bed beneath you groans when you move, the straw inside long since compressed into something vaguely resembling a brick, a very scratchy, slightly moldy brick. Home, sweet home. Your room is small, roughly the size of a modern walk-in closet, but with less charm and significantly more damp. The single window is cracked and smeared with soot, letting in just enough daylight to reveal the gloom. The walls sweat year-round. In summer, it's from the heat. In winter, from the cold. And in between, from the shared breath of the 10 people living on this floor. You run a hand along the wall. It feels alive. That's the mold. Victorians didn't use the term black mold, but they absolutely lived in it. Historians still argue whether the chronic coughs and mystery fevers plaguing the lower classes were due more to bacteria or simply to being slowly digested by their own wallpaper. Above you, the ceiling creaks. Someone's moving about, likely Mrs. Wensley with her 5 children and her husband who smells like fermented cabbage. Their cooking smells seep through the ceiling every evening. You haven't eaten actual cabbage in weeks, but somehow you always smell like it. Your breakfast waits for you in the corner, a chipped bowl of yesterday's porridge left to congeal into a sad gray mass. You eye it, unsure whether to eat it or apologize to it. You decide instead to light a candle and pretend it's still nighttime. The room's floorboards are warped and stained from spills best forgotten. You tiptoe round the dark spots. One of them might be blood or treacle, possibly both. A rat darts under the bed, and you salute it out of habit. His name's probably George by now. He pays no rent, but he keeps the cockroaches humble. Every home in your tenement is a variation of yours, tiny, humid, and creatively lethal. Families cram into single rooms, 5, 10, sometimes more. Privacy is a concept that belongs to the rich, and so does ventilation. Your building, a rickety pile of bricks and despair, was built decades ago, before anyone thought people might actually care about airflow. You share your floor with a widow who sings lullabies to a cracked teacup, a tailor who insists his pants are haunted, and a girl who claims she sees ghosts in the wallpaper. You don't doubt her. The wallpaper peels in long claw-shaped strips. There's no kitchen here, of course, just a hearth with a dented kettle and an iron pot that smells faintly of ash and despair. You cook what you can, usually thin soup, burnt bread, or the occasional mystery stew from the alley butcher. If you're lucky, the meat still has the label on. If you're really lucky, it's not rat. You step out onto the landing, and a soft squish meets your foot. A mop leans drunkenly against the railing, and the floor is slick with something unidentifiable. Probably water. Hopefully not body fluids. You say a quiet prayer to the god of clean socks. Down the hallway, someone has hung up laundry, damp drawers, and a corset swayed gently like ghostly flags. You avoid eye contact with them. Corsets have too much backstory. A door swings open, and a girl about 6 years old barrels into the hallway chasing a chicken. You blink. You don't own a chicken. Neither does she. You watch it disappear down the stairs like it has an urgent appointment. You descend the stairwell carefully. The banister wobbles like a politician's promises, and you make a mental note not to lean too hard. Your foot lands on something soft and wet, and you don't even check what it was. That's growth. The ground floor smells like boiled onions and unwashed feet. You pass the communal water bucket in the corner, already cloudy from use. Nobody dares drink it, not after last week's incident with the dead rat and the lady with the rash. Still, it's technically clean, according to city inspectors who last visited in 1831. Out the back door, you find the yard, a narrow strip of packed dirt and refuse. Clotheslines crisscross above, drooping under the weight of soggy linens and stained bloomers. The outhouse stands in the far corner like a condemned criminal, wooden, splintered, and deeply suspicious. You step inside, or rather, you inch inside because the door doesn't quite close, and there's something impossibly sentient growing on the wall. The pit beneath the seat gapes like the mouth of hell. You hold your breath and handle your business as quickly as possible. Victorians were no strangers to bad plumbing, because plumbing, for most, didn't exist. Chamber pots were common, but they needed emptying, and not everyone bothered with that second step. You've seen worse things fly out of windows in this city than pigeons. Someone once tried to install a flush toilet in a tenement like yours. The neighbors set it on fire, said it was haunted or French. Same difference, apparently. Back inside, you sit on the rickety stool by your window and stare out at the street. A man passes by with a barrel organ, followed by 3 barefoot children dancing and clapping. One of them sneezes directly onto the cobblestones. A dog sniffs it and trots off. This is your home. It's not pretty, but it's familiar. And somehow, amidst the mildew and mice, there's life. There's laughter. There's a woman on the roof hanging laundry while yelling at a cat. There's the smell of bread baking 5 doors down. There's a boy on the corner selling matches and singing off-key. And weirdly, there's community. People look out for each other here. When someone's sick, neighbors bring broth. When the rats get too bold, a few strong lads band together with sticks and dubious courage. When the roof leaks, someone always finds a bucket or a hat. You sigh and stretch again. A drop of water lands on your head. The ceiling has opinions today. You could complain, but where would you go? This is home. A damp, smelly, glorified box. But a box you share with stories, ghosts, and a sense of resilience that smells vaguely of cabbage and never quite dries out. The floor creaks as you shuffle to the corner of your room and lift the lid of your chamber pot. It's nearly full. You stare at it for a long moment, bargaining with yourself. Maybe you could squeeze in one more night. Maybe if you tilt it. No, it's time. You carefully balance the sloshing ceramic pot in both hands. Take a deep breath, not through your nose, and open the door. The hallway greets you with the usual aroma: mildew, stale stew, and the faint but ever-present perfume of humanity's least graceful offerings. You tiptoe past the snoozing dog that might belong to the Wensleys, or might just be squatting here rent-free like the rats. He snores without judgment. You envy him. Descending the stairs with a full chamber pot is a balancing act, requiring the precision of a surgeon and the nerves of a tightrope walker. One misstep, and everyone on the ground floor gets a surprise they will never emotionally recover from. It's like holding a live grenade made of shame. A small girl on the landing watches you pass with wide eyes. You nod at her solemnly. She nods back. You both understand the gravity of this mission. Downstairs, the air thickens. The smell of boiled liver mingles with rotting vegetables, and something sweet you'd rather not identify. You reach the back door, press it open with your elbow, and emerge into the narrow courtyard. Now comes the tricky part. You head for the muck pit, a foul trench dug at the far edge of the yard where tenants are meant to empty their waste. In theory, it's cleaned regularly by the night soil men. In practice, the night soil men are drunk, missing, or both. Sometimes a cart comes by and hauls it away. Sometimes it doesn't. You approach the pit, holding your breath, your arms trembling with the effort of not imagining anything too vividly. You tip the pot. It empties with a thick, gurgling splash that triggers a sympathetic retch from someone inside. You sigh, set the pot down, and wipe your hands on a rag that should really be on fire. Victorian waste management was an adventure. Chamber pots were a household staple, even for the middle class. But the question of where it all went was less clear. In many neighborhoods, it simply didn't. The waste lingered in pits, cellars, or trenches, slowly seeping into the groundwater and everyone's collective nightmares. For the particularly lazy or daring, the preferred disposal method involved tossing it out of an upstairs window. In Scotland, you were supposed to shout "Gardez-le," from the French "Gardez-l'eau," meaning watch out for the water, to warn any unfortunate souls below. Of course, in reality, people rarely bothered with the courtesy shout. You remember the day Mrs. Pickering dumped her pot from the third floor without so much as a whisper. Mr. Hoyt never forgave her or changed his hat. You carry the now empty chamber pot back inside, feeling vaguely victorious. There's something weirdly empowering about not having spilled your own excrement on anyone before breakfast. Back in your room, you rinse the pot with a ladle of water from a rusty jug and set it beside the bed like a faithful servant. Some people line theirs with straw or ash to reduce the smell. You'd tried that once. The rats seemed to enjoy it too much. Chamber pots weren't just for the poor. Wealthier homes had them too, though theirs were often porcelain, painted, and sometimes even monogrammed. Yes, there were rich people in the Victorian era whose waste came with decorative trim. There's something poetic about that, or tragic. For the very elite, chamber pots were hidden inside elegant cabinets called commodes, complete with padded lids and brass fittings. Some even played music to mask the sound of, well, Victorian nature. Historians still argue whether these luxuries were a form of denial or just the world's earliest attempt at bathroom ambiance. You sit down on the edge of your bed and rest your head in your hands. It's not even noon. This is life, a dance of dignity and drudgery, where every trip to the toilet requires planning, courage, and a strong stomach. You think back to the day the building inspector came by. He wore gloves and carried a clipboard. He tapped walls, sniffed suspiciously, and took notes with a kind of performative optimism. He never made eye contact with the chamber pot. You still remember his final remark, "Well, it is technically habitable." And then he left, stepping gingerly over the puddle in the entryway. Technically habitable. That could be the city's motto. Later that day, you make another visit to the outhouse. You're not feeling great. Something's stirring in your stomach, and it's not ambition. You clutch your midsection and wince. The food yesterday, perhaps the meat pie, was a gamble. You might have lost. Inside the outhouse, the stench hits you like a wall. You cough. The pit below has risen disturbingly close to the seat. You've heard stories of people falling in. You decide not to test the odds. Flies buzz. Something scurries. You do your business quickly and stumble back into the yard, pale and vaguely traumatized. You wipe your brow and wonder, not for the first time, how humans survived this era at all. You aren't alone in your suffering. Even wealthier neighborhoods had cesspools beneath homes, great underground reservoirs of filth. When they overflowed, the streets became rivers. In hot weather, the stench became unbearable. This is what led to the Great Stink of 1858, when the smell of the Thames drove members of Parliament to flee their sessions and wrap curtains in lime-soaked sheets. It was this olfactory horror that finally prompted lawmakers to take action. Enter Joseph Bazalgette, the man whose name sounds made up, but whose sewer system saved London. He designed vast underground tunnels to carry waste away from the city, using gravity and hope. Historians still argue whether Bazalgette's sewers saved more lives than any Victorian doctor ever did. Given the alternative, it's hard to disagree. Back in your room, you clean your hands with a rag soaked in vinegar. It burns, but it's the best disinfectant you got. Soap is expensive, water even more so. You make do. The sun is lowering outside. A faint golden light filters through your filthy window, casting long shadows across the floor. You sit down and feel the weight of the day settle into your bones. You survived another day of Victorian sanitation. Barely. You haven't stepped in anything horrifying. You haven't dropped your pot. And your neighbor hasn't thrown his out the window today. That counts as a win. You wake up thirsty. Not the kind of mild thirst you cure with a quick sip from the fridge, but the kind of dry, scratchy, tongue-thickening thirst that makes you question your life choices. You glance at the water jug near your bed. A thin film of something greenish floats at the top. A gnat does the backstroke across it. You gently shoo it away. The water's cloudy, with flecks swirling inside. You stare at it like it might rearrange itself into something more drinkable if you wait long enough. It does not. Welcome to the daily Victorian ritual of, should I drink this or die slightly slower from dehydration? You hold your breath, tilt the jug, and take a cautious sip. It tastes like tin, coal dust, and very old bread. You don't gag, so that's progress. Getting clean water is a gamble. Your building's well has been out of commission for months thanks to a dead pigeon and a boy with too much curiosity and not enough balance. So, you and your neighbors collect water from a nearby street pump. That pump draws from a pipe. That pipe draws from a reservoir. And that reservoir? Well, let's just say even the rats think twice about swimming in it. Historians still argue whether the 1848 cholera outbreak began with bad water or worse hygiene, but you don't need to debate that. You live it. Everyone knows someone who drank from the Broad Street pump and didn't live to regret it. The pump has since been famously blamed and famously shut down by Dr. John Snow, not the guy from the wall. But here in your district, the pumps still run and the bacteria still party. You fill your bucket and carry it carefully up the street, dodging puddles of things you don't want to know about. You pass Mrs. Thatcher pouring her wastewater into the gutter. A cat drinks from it seconds later. You both pretend not to notice. Water in this part of town is public, shared, and never truly safe. Even when it's clear, it's rarely clean. You once found a fish in your bucket. You tried to keep it as a pet, but it glowed in the dark and died mysteriously 3 days later. You never tried that again. You remember the city announcement from last week? Boil your water. Helpful if you can afford firewood, a pot, and the time it takes to burn off your fingerprints trying to balance it over your cracked hearth. So most people don't. For the wealthy, of course, it's different. They have servants to fetch spring water, filters made of sand and charcoal, and fine glass decanters full of liquid so clear it looks fake. Some even import mineral water from Italy in sealed bottles. You don't even import your own mail. You finally make it back to your room with your sloshing bucket. You set it down gently, listening to it glug like an overfed dog. The water will be for everything: cooking, drinking, washing, and maybe even soaking your sore feet if you're feeling fancy. You pour a little into the basin and dunk your hands in. It's ice cold and slightly gritty. You scrub with a chunk of soap the size of a walnut and the color of regret. It doesn't lather. Victorian soap rarely does unless you're rich or lucky. Most days, it just moves the dirt around into new and interesting shapes. Clean water isn't just a challenge, it's an obsession. You hear people whisper about springs with healing powers. One lady swears by bathing in vinegar mixed with rose petals. Another drinks rainwater strained through her bonnet. You once saw a man lick condensation off a lamppost. It was summer. He didn't make it to autumn. You remember hearing about water cures at spas, places in the countryside where people in silk robes sit in lukewarm mineral baths, while doctors write poetry about their humors. You're not entirely sure what a humor is, but you're pretty confident you're out of balance. Someone once suggested bathing in beer. You tried it once. It didn't help your skin, but it did confuse your landlord. Back on the street, a water cart rolls by, its driver hawking fresh river water in a voice that's both cheerful and ominous. The river he's talking about is the Thames, and the water in that cart looks like weak gravy with bubbles. A woman buys some anyway. She says it's for her soup. You recall the newspaper headline from last year, "River water declared safe for industrial use." Not drinking, industrial. Factories use it to clean machines, which, to be fair, is more than you use on your own hands most days. You sometimes dream of clean water, cold, clear, running from a tap, a real tap, not a crusty metal pump with a handle that squeals like a dying goose. You imagine letting it flow until the bowl overflows just because you can. You imagine brushing your teeth with it, or better yet, just brushing your teeth. You shake the dream away. It doesn't help. Not here, not now. Later that evening, you join a few neighbors for a shared meal. You bring bread. Someone else brings soup, thick and murky. You ask what's in it. They shrug. That's usually the safest answer. You eat it anyway, dipping the bread and chewing slowly. The water in the soup has a strange aftertaste, metallic, slightly smoky. But it's hot, and that's all that matters. As you eat, the conversation turns to rumors. A new pump being installed on Main Street. A priest blessing the river to purify it. A family who moved to Manchester and came back with fewer children but clearer skin. People laugh, not unkindly. You all know the truth. Water here is what it's always been: essential, scarce, and untrustworthy. You've heard stories of people catching typhoid from tea. Tea, boiled water. But it's possible. Anything's possible when your water source is also your sewer. You sip carefully from your tin cup, watching the floating specks swirl like a galaxy of bad decisions. This is your daily life. No filters, no guarantees, just a bucket, a prayer, and the ever-present hope that this time you won't get sick. And somehow you carry on. You get up tomorrow, fetch more water, and do it all again. Because that's what people do here. You survive. Bath day. Those two words should be exciting, like a holiday or a feast, but here, in your little patch of 1850s London, they fill you with a kind of quiet dread. You wake with a purpose today. It's been weeks since your last proper wash? Days, at least. You lose track. Time is slippery, when your scent travels faster than you do. The idea of bathing sounds lovely. The reality is anything but. There's no private bathroom waiting for you, no clawfoot tub, no scented candles. What you have is a tin basin, a chipped pitcher, and half a bar of soap that smells vaguely of wet rope and regret. You look at them all like you've just been challenged to a duel. You scoop a few ladles of yesterday's water into the basin. It's cold, of course. Heating it would require coal, and coal is for warmth and tea. Luxuries you can't waste on chasing cleanliness. You shiver before you even touch it. You strip down and stare at the water like it might apologize. Then you start with your face. Cold slap, eyes sting, skin puckers. You move on to your neck, arms, chest, all the while pretending this is relaxing. You scrub, rinse, curse softly, and then tackle your feet last. They deserve the least sympathy. They've seen too much. Soap helps. A little. But it's not like today's stuff. Victorian soap was often made with lye and animal fat, and if it smelled nice, that was either an accident or a trick played by the candle maker next door. Your bar is mostly grit with a hint of lavender that may have been imagined. It barely lathers, but it feels like progress. When you're done, you feel damp, not clean, but improved. You pat yourself down with a towel that has seen better centuries. It's more of a suggestion than a cloth. You try not to think about who else may have used it recently. Victorians didn't bathe daily, not even weekly. For many, especially the poor, a full-body wash was a monthly ritual, or longer. Some cleaned only the visible parts, face, hands, neck. That was called a cat's lick. You've done many a cat's lick in your day. Historians still argue whether the infrequency of bathing in the Victorian era was a cultural choice, a logistical nightmare, or just collective apathy dressed up in lace. The answer? Probably all three. For those with a few coins to spare, public bathhouses offered relief. You've been once. Paid your penny, stood in line, stripped in a damp changing room, and sank into warm, very shared water. The tub was giant, made of stone, and absolutely haunted by soap scum, if not actual ghosts. You soaked for 10 minutes before the bathhouse attendant barked that your time was up. You dressed again in the same dirty clothes and walked out feeling paradoxically both cleaner and not. Speaking of clothes, now comes the hard part. Your underthings need washing, badly. So you set up the washboard and bucket, pour in a ladle of cold water, and begin scrubbing. It's hard work. Your fingers ache. The soap stings cuts you didn't realize you had. But eventually, you produce something that might, in dim light, pass as fresh. You hang your laundry outside your window on a bit of twine and pray it doesn't get stolen or rained on, or worse, dropped into the street and run over by a cart. Now clothed again, you feel lighter. Still grimy under the surface, but socially acceptable for a few days. You smooth your hair with a comb that's missing half its teeth. You smile at your reflection in the cracked mirror. The clean parts of your face almost surprise you. Later, you see your upstairs neighbor Bessie hauling a tin bath down the hallway. It clangs like a dinner bell for ghosts. She's off to her sister's place. Her sister has hot water, well, warmish, well, tepid water, and a stronger back. Bessie's lucky. You hear stories about the wealthy bathing every day. Imagine, not only water and soap, but scented oils, rose water rinses, and soft towels. Some even had indoor plumbing. pipes that ran through walls, bringing water straight into a bathroom the size of your entire flat. Queen Victoria reportedly bathed regularly, though whether she enjoyed it is up for debate. Her physicians believed strongly in cleansing the humors, and they didn't always mean metaphorically. For the middle class, things were improving. Portable bathtubs, indoor washrooms, even early versions of showers powered by hand pumps or servants with kettles. The idea of cleanliness as godliness was gaining steam, especially when the science started suggesting filth might actually be killing people. You heard about that doctor, Lister, the one who started washing surgical tools with carbolic acid. People laughed at first, but they're not laughing now. Well, not the ones who lived. Still, for the average Londoner, cleanliness was an uphill battle. Water was hard to get, firewood expensive, soap unreliable, and time limited. When you work 12 hours a day and share your room with 3 other souls, bathing becomes a negotiation more than a ritual. You think about your friend Tom, who claims he stays clean by just never sweating. He also hasn't moved more than 5 steps in 3 years. He might be onto something. There are health fads, of course. One woman swears by vinegar baths, another by wiping herself down with ammonia. A traveling salesman once sold you a tonic that promised cleanliness from within. You drank it. You didn't leave the outhouse for 2 days. It did clean you out, to be fair. As evening settles in, you sit by the hearth, legs wrapped in a blanket, sipping weak tea. You smell human, not a rose garden, not a graveyard, just somewhere in between. You watch the steam from your cup curl toward the ceiling and think of the bathhouses in Rome, where marble fountains flowed and bodies soaked for hours. You wonder what they'd say if they saw your setup. A tin basin, a rag, and the noble determination to smell less like compost. Still, you're proud. Today, you fought the filth. You didn't win, but you landed a few solid punches. And tomorrow, you'll sweat through your clothes, spill fish oil on your sleeves, and pick soot from your ears. But tonight, you are cleanish, and that in Victorian London is nothing short of heroic. You shuffle along the cobbled lane, dodging puddles that are definitely not rainwater. It's time to answer nature's call, and let's just say Victorian plumbing is not about to do you any favors. You live in a world where the words toilet and dignity rarely share the same sentence. At the back of your cramped tenement block sits the privy, a small wooden hut with a crooked door, a splintery bench, and a hole that leads straight down to, well, you don't like to think about it. The smell hits you before the door does. A sour cocktail of ammonia, rot, and something ancient. It's less a scent and more a personality. This is not a place you linger. You hold your breath, squat with practiced speed, and avoid eye contact with anything living or moving in the corners. The night soil men haven't come by in a while. That hole, it's a horror story, the kind with layers. Sometimes you swear the privy groans when you enter, like even it is tired of this arrangement. You finish your business and make a run for it. No toilet paper, of course. You brought a rag. You'll wash it later, maybe, if you remember, if it still feels worth saving. Public sanitation, that's a laugh. In your part of town, people still throw chamber pots out the window with a cheerful cry of "Gardy-loo!" a warning more out of tradition than actual concern. You learn quickly not to walk too close to the walls in the morning, or ever. In nicer neighborhoods, things are better. Not great, but better. Water closets are becoming fashionable among the wealthy. Indoor toilets, real ones, with porcelain bowls and flush handles, invented decades ago, but only now trickling into homes that can afford them. You once saw one on a cleaning job. It was like glimpsing a unicorn in the pantry. Still, even those had issues. Early toilets often connected to cesspools which weren't properly vented. The result? Backdrafts of gas so foul they could knock out a grown man. Some folks claimed their toilets were haunted. You suspect the ghosts just wanted fresh air. Historians still argue whether the spread of water closets helped or hindered sanitation at first. Without proper sewer connections, many simply funneled filth into the Thames, London's main source of drinking water. Efficiency, Victorian-style. And that brings us to the river. Ah, yes, the Thames. Once a symbol of life and trade, now a flowing broth of disease, dead dogs, factory runoff, and human waste. In the summer of 1858, the stench was so bad Parliament fled the building. They called it the Great Stink. Truly a masterpiece of understatement. You remember that summer? The air turned thick and sour like breathing through a rotting bedsheet. Newspapers blamed the smell for causing illness. The miasma theory, bad air spreads disease, was gospel back then. People hung vinegar-soaked rags around their faces like some sort of low-budget apocalypse chic. One wealthy gentleman famously lined his window frames with sheets soaked in lime and chlorine. Another kept a bouquet of flowers under his hat. You've considered it. Anything to keep the scent of humanity's worst instincts from settling in your nostrils forever. Of course, now you know that germs, not smells, spread disease. But try telling that to someone in 1855. They'd sooner believe you were possessed by impure vapors than admit they needed better sewers. Enter Joseph Bazalgette. Now there's a man you'd buy a pint. He was the civil engineer who looked at the Thames and said, "Right then, let's fix this." And fix it he did. With over 1,000 miles of brick sewer lines, intercepting systems, and pumping stations. A miracle beneath your feet. It's not done yet, not where you live, but the pipes are spreading. You sometimes see men digging trenches and laying bricks in neat arches. They work with purpose, like they know they're saving lives, because they are. Before Bazalgette, cholera outbreaks swept through London every few years. You've lost friends to it. One day they're healthy. The next, they're doubled over, vomiting, skin turning blue, and gone by nightfall. Quick, cruel, and terrifying. You used to think it was just bad luck. Then you started noticing who died. Those near the river, those drinking from public pumps, those without access to clean water. It started to make sense, in a grim sort of way. You remember the name Dr. John Snow. No, not the one with the sword. The real one, who traced a cholera outbreak to a single water pump on Broad Street. He removed the handle, and the deaths stopped. People mocked him, called him obsessive. But you remember how the funerals quieted after that. He saw the truth before the world was ready. Even so, many still cling to old beliefs. They burn incense. They stuff herbs into their waistcoats. One lady swears by a silver spoon under her tongue during foggy mornings. Keeps the miasma out, she says. You humor her. These days, people will do anything to feel safe. At home, you keep your own rituals. A cracked bowl under the bed, just in case. A lavender pouch pinned to your nightshirt. You even sprinkle lime near the privy sometimes. Doesn't help much, but it makes you feel like you're doing something. Tonight, you boil water for tea, and you let it boil longer than needed. Not for flavor, for safety. You watch the bubbles rise like tiny ghosts escaping. You pour the steaming water over leaves and breathe in the warmth. There's something comforting in the act, something defiant. Because in a world where your waste might kill your neighbor and your neighbor's sneeze might kill you, every clean cup is a small rebellion. Tomorrow, you'll carry a bucket to the public pump. You'll hope it hasn't been fouled. You'll avoid the alley behind the tannery where runoff seeps from bricks like the city is weeping. But for now, you sit with your tea. You sip slowly. You survived another day. And in Victorian London, that's more than many can say. The water on your stove has gone cold by morning. You sniff it and decide it's still safe enough to rinse your face. Bathing, though? That's another matter entirely. You haven't had a real bath in, what is it now, 2 weeks? 3? But don't worry, you're not alone. Most Victorians bathe rarely, if at all. You pour a bit of water into a chipped basin, splash your cheeks, rub under your arms, and call it good enough. The cloth is damp and gray by the time you're done, and you hang it to dry next to your only clean pair of stockings. Though clean is really just a hopeful label at this point. Soap exists, but it's a luxury. The cheapest kind is lye-based and stings like a slap. You once borrowed rose-scented soap from a wealthier cousin and smelled like spring for a glorious hour. You dream of that soap sometimes. It had swirls in it. If you're lucky, maybe tonight you'll head to the public bathhouse. They're a relatively new idea. Charitable efforts popping up here and there across the city. Pay a penny or two, and you get a few minutes in a lukewarm tub. There's no privacy, and the towels smell of mildew. But when the water hits your skin, you could cry. You don't, of course. It would waste hydration. Bathhouses vary wildly. Some are clean, efficient, even pleasant, especially the ones founded by social reformers or churches. Others are a gamble. The one near Whitechapel has a drain that gurgles ominously and a resident rat the size of a terrier. Still, you go. Clean is clean, even if it's a bit haunted. Historians still argue whether these early bathhouses were more about moral reform or actual hygiene. Reformers often linked cleanliness with decency, especially for the poor. To them, soap was a symbol of salvation, not just sanitation. At home, though, there's no bathtub, just a tin wash tub that doubles as a laundry basin and sometimes a stew pot. You don't talk about that. When bath time comes, you fill the tub with boiled water, ladled carefully from the stove, and sit knees to chest while your siblings loiter outside the curtain, waiting their turn. First the baby, then the next oldest, and so on until the water is a tepid gray soup. You're second to last. You try not to think about it, and you certainly don't open your mouth under the water. For those lucky enough to afford it, indoor bathrooms are becoming a possibility, complete with running water, tiled floors, and a dedicated washroom. You once cleaned one of these for a family in Belgravia. The marble basin gleamed like moonlight. You could see your face in it, dirty and awe-struck. Of course, rich people also do strange things in the name of cleanliness. One lady insisted on daily sponge baths using only milk, claiming it kept her skin supple. Another swore by a vinegar rinse. You suspect it kept more people away than germs. Some gentlemen frequent Turkish baths, sweating out impurities in lavish steam rooms, lounging on mosaic benches, sipping mint tea. You read about it once in a discarded paper and couldn't believe the decadence. Meanwhile, you're scrubbing your armpits with sand. Speaking of scrubbing, your teeth? You give them a quick brush using soot and salt, just like your mom taught you. Toothbrushes exist, sure, bristled sticks, mostly made from boar hair or horsehair, but they're hard to come by. So you wrap a rag around your finger, dip it in the ash bucket, and go to work. Mint toothpaste won't be invented for another few decades. You've heard whispers of charcoal pastes or even chalk powder, but mostly it's just wishful grins and bad breath all around. You try not to get too close to people. It's a kindness. And then there's your hair. Washing it is an ordeal, so you don't. Not often. Maybe once a month, if there's time and soap. In between, you brush it religiously. 50 strokes a night, just like the old ladies say. Not for vanity, but to keep it from matting. You know a girl who got lice so bad they had to shave her head. The kids at the factory called her Eggy. To avoid that fate, you keep your hair in tight braids. You dab your scalp with lavender water when you can get it. You check your pillow for signs of movement every morning, just to be sure. Your clothes, washed when necessary, but rarely dried fully. In the winter, they freeze stiff on the line. You've worn socks like boards. You've cracked your knuckles trying to bend into a frozen corset. And don't even get started on undergarments. Underwear is expensive. You own 2 sets. One's on your body, the other's airing by the fire. On laundry day, you wash both and pray the wind doesn't carry them off the line like last time. You still miss those bloomers. But despite all this, despite the scarcity, the smell, the embarrassment, you take pride in being tidy. It's not about looking good. It's about fighting back against the filth of the world. It's about showing up to work with a clean collar and brushed boots, even if they're full of holes. You've seen neighbors throw on their best rags for church, faces scrubbed raw, hair slicked flat with spit. Dignity can be stubborn that way, and sometimes, in the quiet moments before dawn, you wonder, what if? What if you had a warm bath whenever you liked? What if clean towels and rose soap were simply normal? Would you feel different, lighter? Would people treat you differently? But the thought fades with the morning light. The fire needs tending. The water needs boiling. Life goes on, and hygiene, like everything else in your world, is just one more thing you wrestle into place. Not perfect, never perfect, but enough to get through the day. You're standing in line for your morning tea and bread, rubbing sleep from your eyes. When the stench hits you, it's not unusual. In fact, it's daily life. The thick, sour smell of rotting waste, horse manure, human filth, chimney smoke, and damp brick seeps into everything. Your clothes, your lungs, your food. You breathe through your mouth when you can, but the stink finds its way in regardless. That's the city's heartbeat. The smell of Victorian London. You shuffle past an open drain trickling down the side of the street. A child in bare feet splashes through it chasing a hoop. You try not to look too closely. Bits of cabbage, dead rats, and worse float lazily by. The gutters double as trash chutes. Some streets are littered with so much waste that carriages sink halfway to the axle, the wheels churning sludge like butter. And the worst of it, you're used to it. You've even learned to identify smells. What's fresh dung, what's old blood, what's just bad fish. The butcher's alley is sharp and coppery. The tanner's yard hits like a punch in the teeth. But the worst? The night soil men. If you've never met one, count yourself lucky. These poor souls haul away human waste from cesspits and privies in the dead of night. They earn a crust doing what no one else will. You hear their heavy boots squelch past your alley some nights, cartwheels creaking, the slosh of their buckets painting horror on the cobbles. It's a risky job. One misstep and you're knee-deep, or worse. Entire walls have been known to collapse when cesspits overflow. One poor chap drowned in his own back garden. Historians still argue whether the infamous Great Stink of 1858 was the turning point or just the last straw. You remember the summer it happened. The Thames turned toxic. The heat baked the sewage, and the reek invaded Parliament itself. Even the politicians couldn't ignore it anymore. They fled their chambers with handkerchiefs to their faces. For once, everyone agreed something had to be done. Enter Joseph Bazalgette, the engineer with a name like a sneeze and a solution like a miracle. He designed a massive underground sewer system, miles of brick tunnels redirecting waste out of the city. You've never seen it, but you've heard it's like a cathedral below ground. Still, change is slow. By now, some of the richer districts are connected. Your neighborhood? Not yet. You still use the communal privy, a wooden shed over a pit. The seat is cold, the smell unbearable. Some people hold it in for days rather than brave the swarm of flies and the occasional rat. There's a woman down your street who refuses to use it entirely. She keeps a chamber pot under her bed and flings the contents from her window at dawn. You've learned to avoid her side of the street in the mornings. Sometimes you wonder what it must be like to live in one of those new terraced houses with flushing toilets and tiled floors. You saw an illustration once. A polished bowl, gleaming pipes, even a tank that refilled itself. It looked like something from a fairy tale. You imagine the feel of the porcelain, cool and clean beneath you. No smell, no flies, just peace. But for now, you manage. You've learned the routine. Go early or hold it in. Always check for spiders under the seat. Never touch the walls. And when it rains hard, really hard, you steer clear altogether. The privy floods. You don't want to talk about it. Even indoors, smells follow you. There's no air freshener. You burn a vinegar-soaked cloth on a spoon to cut the stink, or sometimes just a bundle of herbs on the fire. Lavender, if you're lucky. Mugwort or onion peels, if not. At work, it's no better. The factory reeks of oil and sweat. The schoolhouse smells of chalk dust and mildew. And every time someone coughs, a little cloud of mystery follows. You've started to notice who smells worst. The butcher's boy, always blood. The chimney sweep, sooty and sour. The midwife, iron and vinegar. And yet, you know they probably think the same about you. What's worse than bad smells? Diseased smells. Miasma, they call it. The invisible poison in the air that spreads illness. People still believe that bad smells carry sickness. So when cholera hits, it's not just the water. They blame the stench. You remember when old Mrs. Dobbins died last winter? She coughed for days, and the smell in her room, stale meat and damp bedding, grew stronger each time you brought her broth. The neighbors stuffed cloth in the cracks under their doors. Historians still argue whether people really believed in miasma, or if it was just a desperate guess in the absence of germ theory. Either way, fear smells too. In wealthier homes, they try to fight it with perfumes, eau de cologne, and fancy potpourri jars. Some even dab vinegar on their wrists or wear scented sponges in lockets. You saw a lady with one once, gold filigree hanging like a charm from her neck. She claimed it warded off death vapors. And there are stranger methods still. Camphor balls, tar-soaked rags, burnt sugar cubes. One physician even swore by ozonated air, basically lightning in a box. Didn't work, of course, but the zapping noise probably distracted from the smell. Even Queen Victoria wasn't immune. She reportedly carried a handkerchief soaked in lavender and rose oil. Though some say she also liked carbolic acid, a cleaner's perfume if ever there was one. You once found a bit of lemon peel and rubbed it behind your ears, pretending to be royalty. It didn't last long, but it made you smile. And that's the funny thing about smell. You grow used to it. You stop noticing. The stench becomes the background hum of your life until someone points it out, or until you leave just for a moment and come back. Like the day you visited the countryside. You stepped off the cart and nearly cried. The air was empty. No rot, no smoke, no human press. Just grass, sun-warmed wood, and distant bread baking. You filled your lungs so deep it hurt. You still remember that breath, even now. Surrounded by smells too stubborn to scrub away, you hold on to it. A reminder that the world doesn't always have to stink. You wake up scratching, not lazily, not thoughtfully, desperately. Fingernails dragging across your scalp, behind your ears, down your arms, even inside your waistband. You try to stop, but your fingers have minds of their own. It's not just you. Everyone itches. That's lice. Welcome to Victorian personal hygiene. You rise from your shared straw mattress, tugging at your clothes. You didn't undress last night. No one does. It's too cold, and besides, your only other shirt is still damp from the wash, hung over the fireplace, where it's been steaming like a pudding since Tuesday. You sniff your armpit and wrinkle your nose, sour and sharp, the scent of another lived-in day. You splash your face with water from the basin. It's cloudy. Someone's already used it, but it's all you've got. No soap, just a scrap of cloth and maybe a prayer. Your skin tightens in the cold. You wipe under your eyes, rub your teeth with your finger, and call it clean enough. Now, for the real battle. You roll up your sleeves and inspect the seams. There they are, tiny white knits clinging like dandruff that won't brush off. Lice love warmth, and you, unfortunately, are a walking banquet. You've tried vinegar, you've tried paraffin. Once, a friend swore by butter and soot. Nothing works for long. Historians still argue whether people thought lice were just a nuisance or an inevitable fact of life. Either way, they're with you, on your collar, under your cap, nestled in your eyebrows. You learn to ignore them until someone points it out. You're crawling, they might whisper, and suddenly you're hyper-aware again. Fleas? Same story. You squash them between your fingernails with a satisfying pop. Bed bugs? Worse. They hide in the cracks of your bed frame and bite at night, leaving itchy welts in neat little rows. You wake up scratching, bleeding, grumbling. There are public baths in some parts of the city. If you're lucky and have a spare penny, you might visit one. Big copper tubs, lukewarm water, and a piece of yellow soap pass down a line of strangers. You strip quickly, trying not to make eye contact. The smell of wet bodies, moldy tile, and pine tar fills the room. You dunk yourself in, scrub what you can, and try not to dwell on the fact that someone else just rinsed their feet where your chin is now. Still, it's better than nothing. Some weeks, it's the only real bath you get. Queen Victoria, they say, bathed once a week. You wonder what that must be like. Scheduled hygiene. In your world, water is for drinking and cooking. Anything more is luxury. Even hair washing is rare. You've heard of women using egg yolk or stale beer for shine. Someone once suggested rubbing urine through your locks to kill lice. You didn't try it, but you know someone who did. Some homes have tin tubs. On Saturdays, the whole family takes turns. Same water, reheated by the kettle. The eldest goes first, the baby last. By then, the bath is more stew than soak. But it's warm, and that's something. You visit your cousin once, she's a housemaid in a wealthy home. She shows you the indoor bathroom, white tile, a real flushing toilet, and a polished brass tap over a porcelain basin. It's like seeing a dragonfly, pinned in a case. Fragile, surreal. She tells you the lady of the house washes her face 3 times a day and even has something called toilet water. She spritzes on her neck. Toilet water. You both laugh. It sounds disgusting, but it smells like roses and lemons. Your cousin even has a brush for her teeth. Boar bristles on a bone handle. She offers to let you try it. You hesitate. Your gums already bleed sometimes, but give it a go. It tastes of chalk and peppermint. Strange, but oddly clean. Back home, you use a twig or rub ash on your teeth. Some people swear by soot, others by baking soda. A dentist? Not in your lifetime. Toothaches are handled with clove oil, prayers, or pliers. You've seen a man hold his head in a vise while the local barber yanked a molar free. Let's not even start on toenails. Still, you do what you can. You pick lice off each other like monkeys. You air your sheets on the line. You try to keep clean in a world that punishes effort and rewards resilience. And sometimes that means getting creative. One woman down your street swears by vinegar foot baths. Another uses goose fat on her cracked heels. A man once rubbed his arms with sulfur powder to fight scabies. It worked for a while, but made him smell like rotten eggs. And of course, there's always the sweat solution. Just don't stop moving. Outpace the stink. If your body's busy, maybe no one will notice the odor. You once saw a pamphlet advertising a product called Dr. Punch's odorless underwear, guaranteed to keep you fresh for 7 days. You wonder if it worked, or if it was just a fancy lie for rich people who didn't know the meaning of dirt. At night, you curl under your blanket and scratch again. Your skin is tired, but your brain is wired. Maybe you dream of bathtubs. Maybe you dream of nothing. You lie there with your lice, your fleas, your layered smells, and your stubborn will to keep going. Because the truth is, no matter how grimy life gets, you've carved out your routine. A splash of water, a scrap of soap, a comb passed from hand to hand, a clean shirt when the sun's shining and there's time to scrub the old one in the tin basin. It's not perfect, it's barely passable, but it's yours. And tomorrow, when you wake up scratching again, you'll sigh, rub your eyes, and get on with it. Because that's Victorian hygiene. Your stomach rumbles. But this isn't just hunger. It's the kind of hollow ache that settles deep and wide as if something's missing. Not just food, but strength. You sit up slowly, ribs pressing against skin, And try not to think about how many times this week you've eaten bread so stale you had to dunk it in tea to avoid cracking a tooth. This is what nutrition means in the Victorian age. Whatever you can afford, whatever you can grow, whatever hasn't spoiled in the larder. And balanced diet. That's a phrase for future people. You shuffle toward the hearth. The coals have long since gone out, but someone's left a cracked pot of porridge on the side, thin as water, lumpy as socks. You ladle some into a chipped bowl, no milk, no sugar, just oats, boiled yesterday, reheated today. The poor eat to survive, the rich eat to show off. In the streets, the fishmonger's stall is already surrounded. You can smell it before you see it. Brine, scales, and damp wood. Kippers mostly. Cheap and oily, but filling if you can get them. Further down, a man is selling meat pies from a tray around his neck. They smell heavenly, but you've heard rumors. Rat, horse, spoiled beef. You buy one anyway. Hunger doesn't leave room for pride. Historians still argue whether Victorian diets improved or worsened as the Industrial Revolution surged forward. On one hand, railways brought fresh produce from the countryside to the city. On the other, processed food exploded, and not in a good way. Bleached flour, red-dyed candy made from lead, beer tainted with strychnine. If it looked good and sold cheap, people bought it. You once saw a boy with blue gums from sweets. Sugar stones, they were called. Bright and brittle, delicious. Also mildly toxic. In your world, vegetables are rare and overcooked, boiled to gray mush. Potatoes, thank goodness for them, make up most of your plate when you have one. Cabbage comes next, and only if it hasn't rotted. Carrots, occasionally. Tomatoes? Too exotic. And fruit? You see oranges maybe twice a year. Apples are bruised but sweet. You hide them under your coat when no one's looking. There's a woman near the alley who makes soup from bones she begs from the butcher. It smells better than it tastes. Watery and pale, but warm and comforting. Sometimes you trade for a bowl, a clean shirt, a loaf of bread, a favor. And then there's dripping. You save every bit of fat from your bacon, if you're lucky enough to have bacon, and spread it on stale bread like butter. Salty, greasy, delicious. It slides down your throat and sits like a rock in your gut. That's dinner. On Sundays, if you've saved enough, maybe, just maybe, you queue for a roast. You stand in line at the baker's oven, holding your tin tray filled with whatever meat your family could buy, and wait your turn to have it cooked in their heat. The scent of rosemary, dripping fat and crisping skin is almost unbearable. And tea, blessed, blessed tea. It keeps your belly calm when there's no food. It warms your hands when there's no fire. You reuse the leaves 3-4 times. Add milk if you have it. Add sugar if you're lucky. And if not, just close your eyes and pretend. But here's where things get even stranger. There's a new obsession sweeping through your town. Health food. The upper classes talk about digestion and clean eating. You hear of Dr. Kellogg, an American, experimenting with cereals. Cold food for breakfast? Sounds awful. Still, you wonder what it must be like to eat on schedule, to know what vitamins are, to have meals that aren't a gamble. Then there's beef tea, a sort of meat broth given to the sick. Rich in protein, they say. Smells like boiled socks. You tried it once when you had a fever. It made you queasy, but they said it would give you strength. Even stranger, people start talking about diet and morality. that eating plain food makes you virtuous, that spices and sweets make you weak, even sinful. One preacher says too much meat stirs the animal passions. You roll your eyes and eat the meat anyway. If you can find any, your body suffers. You know it, even if you don't have the words for it. You're always tired. Your skin cracks in winter. Your gums bleed sometimes when you bite into a crust. Your hair is dull. Your nails break. Your joints ache before your time. It's scurvy, or rickets, or pellagra. You don't know these names yet, but you feel them. The lack of something vital, the slow collapse of a body starved of light and nutrients. A neighbor boy has legs that bow out like a hoop. Growing pains, they say, but you wonder. A girl down the road faints often. Her lips are pale, her eyes sunken. She's delicate, they say, but you know better. Still, you do your best. A boiled egg when you can get it. A scrap of cheese, a mug of ale to wash it all down, not just for pleasure, but because water isn't always safe to drink. You've heard of people getting cholera from their own pumps. So ale it is. Even the children drink it. You once heard someone claim that red wine strengthens the blood. You've never tasted it, but it sounds rich and heavy and true. Sometimes in your dreams you eat like royalty. Roast duck with orange glaze, pears poached in cinnamon, pudding with clotted cream. You wake up chewing the inside of your cheek and tasting nothing but air. But sometimes, too, you sit with your family by the fire, a crust shared between you, and it's enough. You laugh. You scrape the bottom of the pot together. You drink tea and forget what you're missing. Because food isn't just fuel, it's comfort, connection. Even in the tightest hunger, there's still something sweet about eating together, scraping by, surviving the next meal. That, too, is Victorian health. Hungry, hollow, but still holding on. You cough into your sleeve again. It's dry this time, no blood, not yet, but the kind that rattles in your ribs like old wagon wheels over cobblestones. People glance sideways when they hear it, not because they're rude, but because they're afraid. Afraid of you, of what you might be carrying. In Victorian Britain, illness isn't private. It's public. It's on your breath, your clothes, your skin. You live in a city where sickness doesn't visit. It lingers, like smoke, like fog, like something you never quite escape. You shuffle past the rag-and-bone man dragging his cart down the road and notice the boy walking behind him, coughing just like you. Thin, pale, lips dry. You wonder how long he has. Weeks? Months? The whispers call it consumption, though we later name it tuberculosis. It's everywhere, and it kills quietly, slow, wasting, a person hollowing out before your eyes. Doctors argue over what causes it. Some blame bad air, some say it's inherited, others talk about humors or miasmas. Germ theory is just a glimmer on the horizon. But until that catches on, treatments range from the useless to the bizarre. You remember your aunt's home remedy, warm milk, salt, and soot. She swore by it. You tried it once. You never made it past the second sip. The richer folk, of course, escape to the sea or the mountains. They breathe clean air, eat fresh food, and rest in sunlight. You don't have that option. You rest when your boss lets you. You breathe whatever air your street serves up, usually smoke, coal, manure, or worse. And let's not forget cholera. It moves like a phantom through crowded tenements. One day, your neighbor's fine. The next, they're vomiting and collapsing in the hallway. You hear the clatter of a pail. Too late. Their face is already pale blue, eyes wide, gone. Historians still debate whether the government's slow response was negligence or ignorance. Some say the officials truly didn't understand. Others argue they simply didn't care, until rich people started dying too. It wasn't until a stubborn doctor named John Snow, not the one you're thinking of, mapped the deaths in Soho and traced the outbreak to a single water pump on Broad Street that people began to listen. He took the handle off the pump. Deaths dropped. Coincidence? Some said yes. Others finally admitted maybe it is the water. But before that moment of clarity, treatment meant chalky potions, bleeding, leeches, or being shut up in a fever ward, rows of beds packed side by side, no ventilation, no sanitation, just moaning, coughing, praying. And what about the mentally ill? They aren't sick, they're possessed, melancholy, hysterical. You've seen them carted off in iron-bound wagons, clutching dolls or screaming songs, locked in asylums where care means cold baths, restraints, and silence. There's a girl you knew once, bright as a flame, always drawing birds on scrap paper. One day she stopped speaking. Her parents sent her away. You never saw her again. The line between illness and punishment is thin. And then there's pregnancy. You've seen women give birth on kitchen tables, on floorboards and alleyways, no antiseptics, no midwives unless they could pay. A rusty blade, a rag, maybe a prayer. You've seen too many babies wrapped in cloth and buried before they had names. And if a woman gets a fever afterward, they call it childbed fever. Many never rise again. But somehow, miraculously, some people do survive. You know a boy who fell from scaffolding, broke both legs, got infected, and still lived. They rubbed his wounds with turpentine and wrapped them in lamb fat. Disgusting, but it worked. Maybe. Quack doctors crowd the markets. Snake oil salesmen shout from corners, elixirs, tonics, miracle cures. Cough drops laced with opium, syrups glowing green with mercury. You tried one once, kept you awake for 2 days and made your teeth buzz. Effective? Sure. Healthy? Questionable. One woman sells pills that promise to restore feminine vigor. You're not sure what that means, but people buy them. People are desperate. Hope is sold in bottles. You hear of electrotherapy for the nerves. Little shocks to jolt the body back into shape. Sounds terrifying, and not entirely unlike a prank. You pass. And yet, even in this chaos, there's something astonishing, a growing idea that sickness can be understood, that there might be order, logic, pattern, that we might not be cursed or damned, but simply infected. This is radical. Hospitals shift slowly from places to die to places to heal. Florence Nightingale, that fierce lady with the lamp, storms into Scutari during the Crimean War and insists on cleanliness, fresh air, proper nutrition. Death rates drop. She returns to Britain and changes nursing forever. Her ideas ripple into your world, even if the ripples are small and slow. Still, don't let that fool you. You live in a place where a toothache can kill you, where a bad cut might mean amputation, where the wrong breath in the wrong alley means you're gone by morning. There's a man on your street with a wooden leg. You ask him how he lost the real one. Splinter got infected, he says, like it's the most ordinary thing. You've learned to fear fever, to fear coughing, to fear swelling, shivering, sweating. Every symptom is a coin toss. You boil your water now. You use vinegar to scrub your floor. You open windows, even in winter, not because you're sure it helps, but because something deep in you wants to fight back, wants to believe that maybe, just maybe, illness isn't destiny. Maybe knowledge matters. Maybe we can learn our way out of this fog. But tonight, your chest is tight. Your nose is stuffed. You press a hot cloth to your forehead and sip the bitter tea a neighbor gave you, made from herbs and hope. You lie down and close your eyes and whisper to yourself, "Don't let it be the fever." You wake in darkness, coughing again. The coal fire's gone out, leaving the air heavy, like breathing through wool. Your throat scratches like it's lined with ash. Somewhere down the alley, a dog is barking. You pull your blanket closer, thin, stiff, smells of damp cloth and chimney smoke, and try not to think about what's crawling in it. You really shouldn't sleep with your mouth open in this city, because London, Manchester, Birmingham, all these boom towns of the industrial age, they aren't just loud and busy. They're filthy. Not accidentally filthy, but deeply, structurally, relentlessly so. There's grime that doesn't wash out. You've got soot in your eyebrows, under your nails, caked in the corner of your eyes. Even your dreams smell of coal dust. Let's talk about the air. The fog, they call it, or smog, or the London particular, a name that sounds almost affectionate, like it might be a type of pudding. But this particular is a mustard-colored cloud of soot, sulfur, and damp that rolls through streets and wraps around buildings. It's thick enough that gas lamps barely cut through it. You once walked into a horse by accident because you couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The horse did not appreciate that. People cough up black phlegm and call it chimney lung. Kids wheeze like old men. And the rich? They leave the city altogether when it gets bad. They call it a health retreat. You call it unfair. You pass a boy sweeping a chimney. He's about 7, covered head to toe in soot, hands bleeding from brick scrapes. He gives you a grin with teeth so white they seem almost unreal. You can't help but smile back. Then he disappears up the flue again like a ghost. Historians still debate how many children died from that work. No one really counted. Now picture the streets. Imagine gutters choked with straw, dung, bones, rinds, rotten cabbage, dead rats. The drains are shallow, blocked. Sometimes they overflow, spilling a sick soup of filth into the cobbles. You step carefully, everyone learns to. Night soil men come in the dark hours to empty privies and cesspits, those delightful backyard toilets people share with entire tenements. Some just dump the waste straight into the Thames. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Except, of course, the river is where you get your drinking water. It's a miracle anyone lives past 40. A quirky solution someone once proposed? Raising pigs in the streets to eat all the garbage. That's right. Victorian garbage disposal by hog. For a while, it worked. Until the pigs started spreading their own delightful brand of disease, and the idea was, shall we say, retired. But the filth isn't just outside. It follows you home. You live in one room with 6 people, sometimes more. No sink, no toilet. One tub, if you're lucky. And it's for laundry, not soaking. You heat water on the stove and wash with a rag. Soap's expensive, and forget shampoo. You use lye or vinegar, if anything. Once a week, if the weather's fair, there's a public bathhouse. You walk there with your towel slung over your shoulder, waiting your turn in a line of equally unwashed strangers. You get 15 minutes. Hot water, then cold, then out. No lingering. If you're a woman, you time your bath carefully. No one wants to bump into certain men on their way out. And no one listens if you do. Still, it's better than nothing. You wash your clothes rarely, because washing takes time, space, and water. And those are luxury items. Your undergarments are stiff with wear. Your socks could stand on their own, but you press them flat and make do. There's a woman on your street known for boiling her sheets every month like clockwork. People think she's mad for the effort, but her kids seem healthier than most. Some say cleanliness is next to godliness. Others say it's just another thing rich people can afford. When public health officers finally start making rounds, they're shocked. They jot down what they see. Damp walls, mold creeping like ivy, floorboards slick with rot. One inspector writes that he found maggots in a baby's crib. People argued whether he was exaggerating. You'd argue he probably wasn't. And yet, you do try. You sweep. You hang clothes to dry over the fire. You scrub your floorboards with salt and vinegar. You boil water in the kettle before drinking it. You make lavender sachets and tuck them in drawers. You even mix ashes into soap when you're out of lye. Because deep down, you want to be clean. And now, slowly, change is coming. Newspapers begin publishing letters from concerned citizens, some real, some possibly fabricated, demanding cleaner streets and proper sewage. There's a growing awareness that dirt isn't just ugly, it's deadly. The Great Stink of 1858 forces Parliament to act. The smell of human waste from the Thames is so overwhelming that politicians flee their chambers with handkerchiefs over their faces. Finally, they fund a massive sewage project. Sir Joseph Bazalgette, bless him, designs an underground system of pipes that will carry waste far from the city. It takes years, but eventually the river begins to breathe again. You still can't drink from it, but it stops killing people quite so aggressively. Hospitals start insisting on hygiene. Inspired by Florence Nightingale, they open windows, scrub floors, and wash hands. Not everyone believes it matters. Some doctors even scoff. But infection rates drop. Slowly, minds change. Meanwhile, schools begin teaching basic cleanliness. How to wash your hands, brush your teeth, if you still have them, and air your bedding. These lessons are simple, but they plant seeds. And then there's the soap ads. Oh, the soap ads. They promise transformation from pauper to princess, from grime to glamour. Imperial leather, pears, sunlight, all competing to sell you the dream of cleanliness. It's a bit manipulative, but it does make you want to smell nice. So, you buy a sliver when you can. You bathe with it, carefully, sparingly. The lather is thin but fragrant. You feel almost human again. And as you sit by the fire drying your feet on a threadbare cloth, you look around and think, maybe we're not doomed. Maybe we're just dirty. And if that's true, well, that's something we can fix. Eventually. You're awake before the sun and it's freezing. Not nip of winter freezing. This is breath crystallizing, toes stiff and your boots kinda cold. You curl your knees to your chest, trying to stay in the warm patch your body made overnight on the straw mattress. It smells faintly of mildew and something worse. You really hope it's just mildew. You might not know it, But you're living through what historians call the Little Ice Age, a period when winters are unusually harsh. And in Victorian Britain, cold kills more people than cholera, especially if you're poor. So what do you do when the chill seeps into your very bones? You layer. You wear everything you own: petticoats, vests, shawls, coats, socks with holes. You tuck warm stones into your bed. You huddle close to whoever shares the mattress with you, even if you're fighting, even if they snore. Heating's expensive. Coal costs money. So you ration your fire like it's gold. You light it only when absolutely necessary, and only in one room if you're lucky enough to have more than one. Everyone gathers there, packed tight, knees touching, hands outstretched. The windows are iced over from the inside. You scratch out a peephole with your fingernail. But inside your little cocoon of warmth, something else begins to brew. Miasma. That's the word on everyone's lips. The fear that foul air, thick, putrid, invisible, can make you sick. Before germ theory really takes hold, most people think disease comes from bad air. It's not entirely wrong. Bad air often means bad conditions, but it's not the air itself. Still, you try to protect yourself the best way you know how. You carry a scented handkerchief to cover your mouth in crowded places. You dab vinegar under your nose. You hang herbs like rosemary and lavender in doorways. Some women wear tiny vials of perfume around their necks just to hold something sweet against the stink. Quirky fact? People once believed carrying a slice of raw onion in your pocket could ward off illness. Supposedly, the onion would absorb the poison in the air. The only thing it really absorbed was everyone else's appetite. Historians still argue whether miasma theory actually helped public health in the end. Sure, it was scientifically wrong, but it encouraged people to clean their streets and homes. In a weird way, fear of miasma made the world a little more hygienic. You open your window just a crack to let the stale air out. It's counterintuitive in the cold, but your mother always said fresh air keeps the fevers at bay. You don't argue with her on that. As you step outside, wrapped in layers like a walking wardrobe, you spot the dust men at work, hauling away ash and cinders from fireplaces. This isn't garbage as we know it. Ash is everywhere, in everything. It gets in your lungs, in your food. Still, it's better than freezing. You walk past a woman scrubbing her stoop with a stiff brush. It's a ritual. Every morning she clears away the city's grime. Her knuckles are red and raw, but she does it anyway. Some say it's pride. Others call it superstition. Like if your front step is clean, illness won't find you. You pass a workhouse and catch a glimpse of children lined up for their morning inspection. Heads checked for lice, hands examined for scabs. Cleanliness is enforced, but often with more punishment than soap. Inside private homes, if you're wealthy, things are different. You might have hot running water. You might have a maid whose job is just to change chamber pots. You might even own a water closet, an actual flushing toilet recently improved by a man named Thomas Crapper. Yes, really. Upper-class homes are starting to smell less. And then there's the fashion. Corsets, bustles, crinolines, designed for beauty, not practicality. You sweat into the fabric, but it's rarely washed. Instead, people change their linens, chemises, drawers, underskirts, more often, hoping they'll absorb the dirt. Don't let the outerwear get soiled. they say. It's all about appearances. Perfume becomes your best friend. Not delicate floral water, but full-bodied, nose-burning concoctions that mask everything from body odor to rotting teeth. Remember that smile with the white teeth from earlier? That's rare. Most people suffer from what they call scurvy of the gums, vitamin C deficiency, bleeding, swelling, loose molars. You brush your teeth, if you do at all, with crushed charcoal or salt. Toothpaste is a luxury. Toothbrushes are sometimes shared in families. Still, you make do. You chew mint, you chew parsley, you chew cloves if you can get them. You avoid speaking too closely. Social etiquette, like keeping a certain distance, wasn't just about manners. It was self-defense. You reach your workplace, a textile mill perhaps, or a match factory, and the cold is still with you, but now joined by something worse. Damp. Water trickles from the windows. The machines drip oil. Your feet are wet all day. You walk on duckboards to avoid puddles. But your shoes are thin. There's no such thing as dry socks. And still you toil. 12, 14, 16 hours, breathing fibers, choking dust, surrounded by the stink of oil and flesh. You scrub your hands before lunch with a rag dipped in turpentine. It doesn't help, but it feels like trying. At the end of the day, you're filthy again. So you stop by the pump. Every neighborhood has one, an iron spout, cold and stubborn, that squeaks and groans as you coax water from the earth. You rinse your face. You fill your tin pail. You try not to think about what might be upstream. John Snow, no, not that John Snow, was one of the first to prove that cholera came from water, not air. He traced an outbreak to a single pump on Broad Street, and once it was shut down, the sickness waned. It was the beginning of germ theory, but many didn't believe him at first. Change is slow, but it's coming. You pass a new sign on your way home. Public lavatory, 1 penny. It's clean, lit, attended. You smile. Progress smells faintly of bleach. That night, as you wash your feet with tepid water and peel off your damp stockings, you feel a little hope. You whisper goodnight to your siblings, tuck your toes into the warm patch again, and wonder, will your children breathe cleaner air than you? You hope so. And in the faint echo of your coughing, the answer is out there. In sewers that carry waste away, in campaigns for fresh water, in mothers scrubbing stoops before dawn, in onions carried in coat pockets. It's imperfect, it's fragile, but it's something. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. You wake to a strange, distant clanging, metal on stone, rhythmic and unrelenting. At first, you think it's a dream. But no, it's the night soil men. They're here again, hauling away the week's worth of human waste from the back alleys and cesspits of the tenements. You gag a little at the smell curling in through the cracks in the wall. It's not subtle. Victorian cities are bursting at the seams, and so is their filth. For every beautiful row house with lace-curtained windows, there are a dozen back-to-back dwellings piled high with people and their refuse. The sheer volume of human waste is astonishing. The population of London alone has doubled within a few decades, and the infrastructure hasn't even pretended to keep up. You trudge past an open gutter running down the side of the street. It glistens ominously in the early light. Rain hasn't fallen in days, but the stench suggests otherwise. Somewhere down there is a dead rat, or 5. And that clanging? That's the sound of a society still trying to figure out what to do with its waste. If you're lucky, Your building has a privy out back, a wooden seat over a deep pit, shared by dozens. If you're very unlucky, it's just a bucket in a corner, and someone's job is to empty it once a week. Yes, that's a real job. The night soil men, covered head to toe in filth, move silently through the city's underbelly, carrying away barrels of waste in the dead of night. It pays well, relatively speaking, but no one wants to shake your hand at the pub. Meanwhile, on the upper floors of the wealthier homes, a curious invention has appeared: the flushing toilet. With a chain pull and a dramatic whoosh, your waste disappears from view. But there's a catch. The sewers below the city aren't designed to handle water, and certainly not that much water. The result? A problem of almost mythical proportion: the Great Stink of 1858. You're there. You remember it. The Thames is no longer a river. It's a rotting soup of industrial runoff, human excrement, dead animals, and the ghost of every bad decision London has made in the last century. The stench is so overwhelming that Parliament suspends meetings. They soak the curtains in lime. MPs flee the city for country estates. And here you are, holding a vinegar-soaked cloth to your nose like everyone else. Breathing through your mouth doesn't help. You taste it now. But oddly, this catastrophe is a turning point. The horror finally pushes the government to act. Enter Joseph Basil Gett, an engineer with a name like a Dickens character and a vision like no other. He designs a sewer system so massive, so forward-thinking, that parts of it are still used today. That's right. If you've ever used a toilet in modern London, chances are you owe Basil Gett a thank you. Of course, he's not an overnight hero. Historians still argue whether the political will to support him came from public health concern or just pure self-preservation among the elite. Probably a bit of both. Meanwhile, in your own life, you begin to notice small changes. New pipes appear along the street. Your landlord starts charging a little more rent and mutters about sanitation upgrades. The pump water seems clearer. Your neighbor's baby, who always seemed sick, begins to smile more often. Even your bath water looks less suspicious. Speaking of which, it's bath night. Not every night. Don't be ridiculous. Weekly if you're lucky, monthly if you're not. The whole family shares one tub. Water is hauled, boiled, poured, and reused. Eldest goes first. By the time it's your turn, the water's lukewarm, gray, and oddly gritty. You do your best. You scrub hard. You try to forget how many people have already been in this bath. Soap, by the way, is still a luxury. If you can't afford it, you improvise. With sand, with ash, with sour milk. Yes, milk. Supposedly good for the skin. And that fringe remedy everyone talks about? Turpentine. Just a few drops, they say, in a tin of hot water to soak your feet. It's said to kill fleas, soothe bunions, and ward off bad spirits. More likely, it just stings like blazes. Yet you persist, because slowly society is shifting. Public bathhouses begin to open, not just in the richest neighborhoods, but even in working-class districts. A penny for a wash. 2 if you want hot water. Women go during the day, men at night. Modesty is observed, barely. But for the first time, you feel what it means to be clean, without effort or shame. You look in the mirror afterward and hardly recognize yourself. And then there's laundry. Victorian laundry is an event, not a chore, a ceremony. You boil clothes in a copper vat, stir them with a stick the size of a broom, wring them out with iron mangles, and hang them to dry in soot-filled air. White shirts? Never truly white. You use blue dye to make them appear cleaner. Optical illusions in the war on grime. You marvel at your mother's strength. Her arms are like rope. She can wring out a bed sheet with a twist of her wrist and hang it straight as a soldier's trousers. You help by scrubbing collars with lye soap and try not to splash your eyes. Because even cleanliness can be dangerous. Lye burns. Bleach fumes choke. Gas lamps ignite flammable oils left too close. Many a laundry maid ends her shift with bandaged hands and blurred vision. And yet, we celebrate cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness, they say, preachers, teachers, and social reformers alike. There are entire charities devoted to teaching the poor how to wash, how to sweep, how to air out a room. It's not just about health. It's about morality, which brings us back to you. You, who live at the tail end of an era of filth, are beginning to see what comes next. Sewer grates no longer overflow every time it rains. The gutters are swept. Soap is cheaper. The newspapers print health advice alongside gossip. You no longer gag at the water pump at night. Curled in bed, you listen not to rats in the walls, but to the distant rush of underground water. Away, always away, carried far from you by miles of brick-lined tunnels that twist like veins beneath the city. You exhale long and slow. You've made it through another day, another bath, another bucket emptied. And even though the world still stinks in places, the winds are shifting. You can smell change in the air. You open your eyes to sunlight, real sunlight, not that murky haze filtered through chimney smoke. The air still smells a bit sour, like wet laundry left too long, but something feels different, fresher somehow, cleaner. It's the final years of Queen Victoria's reign, and London, no, all of Britain, is changing. You step outside and for once, you don't have to lift your skirt or your trousers to avoid raw sewage. The street's been cobbled. There's a drain that actually drains. A boy with a broom walks past you whistling as he sweeps away horse manure before it has a chance to dry and scatter. You give him a nod. He grins. His teeth are cleaner than yours. Victorian health reform has gathered steam like a well-tuned locomotive, and by now its engine is humming. Public health isn't just a movement, it's becoming policy. Your city is now dotted with strange new buildings, public toilets, wash houses, dispensaries. You're not quite sure how they're funded. Some tax, some charity, some mysterious benefactors in top hats. But you're grateful all the same. Remember when people didn't even talk about hygiene? Now you can't shut them up. Women gather for temperance meetings and end up discussing bleach recipes. Children are taught hand-washing rhymes. Sunday sermons include hygiene tips between the fire and brimstone. Even chimney sweeps are given soap. Sometimes you pass a printed poster on a wall. Clean homes save lives. A bit dramatic, but not wrong. Historians still argue whether the sudden public interest in cleanliness stems more from moral panic or genuine compassion. Is it because the middle class doesn't want to catch working class diseases? Or because someone finally connected clean water to lower infant mortality? No one can quite agree, but the result is the same. Toilets flush, babies live, and the Thames is finally less terrifying. You visit a new friend in a model tenement block. It's a different world. Wide staircases, windows in every room, a water closet on every floor. You even see flowers on the sill, real ones, not painted on the wallpaper. The family's got a bar of soap wrapped in cloth to keep it dry. It's scented like lavender. You stare at it for a full 5 seconds. At home, you try to imitate the setup. You find an old tin, fill it with chalk and ashes, and call it powder soap. It doesn't smell great, but it feels good under your nails. You soak your feet just because you can. There's no ceremony to it anymore, just habit. Hygiene is becoming normal. That's the strange thing. You used to dream of being clean, now you expect it. Even in hospitals, things look different. Nurses wear white. Floors are scrubbed daily. Doctors, some of them at least, are finally washing their hands between surgeries. You hear about a woman named Florence Nightingale, a war nurse turned national icon. She's published a book. They say it's full of common sense things like opening windows, cleaning linens, and not placing 10 typhoid patients in the same room. Groundbreaking. One day, you visit a bathhouse that's part of a new hygiene charity. You pay a penny and step into a tiled room that echoes with steam and chatter. There's a row of stalls, each with its own wooden door. You're given a towel that's only slightly damp from the last person. You take off your boots, you breathe. This isn't just survival anymore. This is living. And yet, you don't forget where you came from. You still see the chimney smoke. You still remember the thick fog that hid every bad smell and every worse reality. The dead rats, the cholera pumps, the scolding matron who told you soap was for Sundays. You remember the girl who died because she bathed once a month instead of once a week? The boy whose arm turned black from an infected scrape? The man who drank from the river and never came back? So yes, when you see a new pipe being laid on your street, you celebrate. Not with a parade, but with something quieter. A deep, long exhale. Progress, you realize, isn't always grand. Sometimes it looks like soap flakes in a basin, or a child who doesn't cough through the night, or a pump handle that stays polished, or your own fingers, clean and wrinkled after a long soak. And as the century turns, you sense a new hope rising. Public health becomes policy, not charity. Doctors argue about germs instead of blaming bad air. Schools begin to teach hygiene, not just Latin or arithmetic, but actual hygiene. You laugh when you hear that. Latin never cleaned a chamber pot. And while many homes still share privies and buckets, the new ones, they come with water closets. Imagine that. Toilets as standard issue. You almost cry. Late one night, walking home past the gas lamps, you catch your reflection in a shop window. You pause. Your collar is clean. Your cheeks have color. Your breath doesn't fog the glass with illness. You survived. And not just you. Your whole city. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough to make you believe this strange new century might just be livable. And with that thought, you close the door behind you, light a small oil lamp, and ready yourself for bed. Your sheets are dry. Your room smells like soap and something faintly floral. Maybe rosewater, maybe hope. The streets are quieter now. Fewer clattering horses, fewer coughs. Just wind, just sleep. You've come a long way tonight. From the choking fog of the factory alleys to the soft, soapy scent of a quiet bedroom. You've survived the stench of the great stink. trudged through overflowing gutters, scrubbed your fingers raw in icy water, and watched entire cities evolve one flush at a time. And through all of it, you endured. You saw firsthand how hard life was when health and hygiene weren't part of the conversation. When filth wasn't just unpleasant, it was deadly. But you also witnessed the slow, stubborn rise of something better, a society inching its way toward cleanliness, toward compassion, toward modernity. So, as you lie back now, pillow soft beneath your head, eyes heavy from the journey, take a moment to let it all go. The streets are clean now. The water runs clear. You're safe. Breathe in slowly and out. Let the sound of Victorian London fade behind you, the clatter of wheels, the hiss of gas lamps, the echo of boots on stone. Let it all melt away into the dark, into peace. The night wraps gently around you now, a blanket of quiet, cool air and distant memory. Tomorrow will come, as it always does. But for now, you're here, drifting on the soft tide of sleep, soothed by the knowledge that even the dirtiest corners of history can be scrubbed clean by time. Rest well, time traveler. You've earned it. End of script. Sweet dreams.